Hey guys, this is a Jaeger task guide for stray dogs. For this task, you do have to locate and eliminate Knight, Big Pipe, and Birdeye, who are considered the goons or the goon squad, and they are actually labeled as rogue bosses. And just so you guys know, for the actual task, you do not have to eliminate all three in a single raid. You can eliminate them one at a time over multiple raids if necessary. But if you are an achievement hunter, there is an achievement to eliminate all three of them in a single raid. And my goal for this guide is to provide everyone with some in-depth information to make the engagement smoother. That way those of you who are hunting them but struggling to eliminate them for your stray dogs task, or even if you haven't gotten the chance to ever fight them before, then I will have some tips and tricks in here that will hopefully help you guys to come out on top the next time that you do run into them, even if they do take you by surprise. And just so you guys know, there will be timestamps below so that this video will appeal to everybody, and that way you can jump around to the parts that you may be looking for, like how to fight them on specific maps or which guns are the best to use against them. So now we'll go over some information on the Goon. So Knight does have a level 5 chest rig, which is the CPC Goons Edition plate carrier, and he also does wear his ominous predator looking Death Knight face mask, and although it is only a level 1, it does have a high ricochet chance. Now Knight also does have a health pool that is just over 1100 hit points, with the total being 1120, and that does include 80 to the head and 220 to the thorax, so he is pretty tanky and can feel like a bullet sponge when you are shooting him. But the reason why I will specify the hit points to the head and also to the thorax for all the goons is because with the values that they have, for example, Knight with a total of 80 to the head, then there is only going to be a few rounds in the game that can be versatile enough to one-shot him in the head, but also then capable enough to deal significant damage through his higher class level 5 armored rigs that both Knight and Big Pipe will be running, especially since they both have 220 health to the thorax. And speaking of Big Pipe, we will now move on to him, and as mentioned, he also does wear a level 5 chest rig, being the plate frame Goons Edition plate carrier, and he does have 910 overall hit points with 70 to the head and 220 to the thorax. So even though he does have quite a bit less overall health than Knight, including 10 less to the head, there is still only going to be a few rounds in the game that can one-tap him to the dome. And when you are dealing with the goons, you want to put each one of them down as fast as possible, so you don't want to give them a chance to aimbot you, because they will definitely kill you almost instantly if they begin to shoot. So basically you want to take these health pools into consideration when choosing the ammo for the gun that you want to use. And lastly, we will go over Birdeye, who can be wearing a level 4 Thor armor, or he can also be wearing no armor at all, and he does have 795 hit points with 70 to the head and 175 to the thorax. So even though he isn't nearly as tanky as the other two, he does however have mostly silent footsteps, so he will tiptoe his slipper wearing ass right up behind you while you are focused on one of the other goons, and then he will execute you if you're not careful. So just because his health pool and armor are going to be lower than the other two, it definitely doesn't mean that he's going to be easier. It just means that you have to take other things into consideration when fighting or isolating Birdeye off alone. And so one thing about Birdeye that I did mention with the mostly silent footsteps, what I mean by that is that if it is summertime or if he is indoors, then he will have completely silent footsteps similar to a cultist. But if there is snow on the ground when he is moving around outside, then you will faintly be able to hear him moving around on you. Now for the weapons that the goons can be using, Knight can spawn in with a 7.62 Scar with M61, M80 or BCP, or he can also have a black 7.62 MDR with M61, M62 or BCP. And sometimes I'll even see him with a mutant that has either PS or BP ammo. But this wipe, what I have been seeing him mostly with is the SIG Spear that has either the FMJ or the hybrid ammo. So if he is running the SIG in general or the M61, M62 or BP rounds in the other guns, then it can definitely be a bad day for you. However, it really doesn't matter what ammo that the goons are running, because I have been aimbotted and instantly deleted by BCP while wearing tier 5 armor, which is especially true if you do get screwed over by the bug where the bosses deal double damage. So best case scenario is essentially try to only fight them when you are behind hard cover and not get shot. Now as for Big Pipe's weapons, he has an MCX primary with M62 or AP rounds, and he can also have one of the two different grenade launchers or the hammer shotgun with flechettes as a secondary. And a bonus to look out for on Big Pipe is that he does usually run the Contact 4 headset, so that is one thing that I'll always search for on him to either insurance fob my own or to upgrade the headset that I came into raid with. And as for Birdeye's weapons, he will have a long range gun, being either the RSAS running M80 or M993, or an M700 with M61 or BCP, or he can also have an SR25 with M80, M61 or BCP. And then as the secondary, usually he will have an M4 with 855, 55A1, 56A1 or SOST rounds. And just a note here for you guys is that all three of the goons do have the potential to spawn any keycard in the game. So I have personally gotten a red keycard off of Birdeye. I've had buddies get green keycards off of Birdeye or Knight. So just be sure to check their pockets and bags to see if you guys are going to get lucky with a potential drop. Now, as for the guns that I tend to recommend, it would be something that fires a 7.62x51 with M80 rounds for the ability to one-tap Knight's head, or you can also use M62 to one-tap everything except for Knight. And basically the Black MDR or the SA58 are the two favorite guns this wipe for most people, so I would just make sure to run either a 25 round mag for the MDR or a 30 rounder for the Juice Cannon, since the 20 round mags cannot be enough if two or even all three of them push you at the same time. And other options within this caliber is that you could run DMRs like the RSAS, the SR25, or the M1A, which last wipe I absolutely would have recommended, but this wipe it is definitely a different story, and I would recommend that you use one of the aforementioned guns over them. Now you do also have the option of running a 54R weapon like an SVDS, and for that caliber I would recommend PS ammo, which will do 84 damage, and it will also pen level 5 armor quite well. And one benefit to this ammo is that it can be bought from the flea at the time that I am making this video, and it can also be bought from proper level 3 after completing Punisher Part 6. Or you can always run any of the different 54R ammo that you want, just be sure to know what's in your mags so that you don't try and one-tap Knight with a BT round, or try and thorax him with an LPS, because you'll just end up making your own life harder. So basically just know the limitations of your ammo and then have a plan going into the fight based on that. Now, some of your other options are that you can use a gun firing 7.62x39 and use PP as a minimum, but BP is definitely going to be better. And even though these bullets will not one-tap the goons, the fact that the guns are automatic, it will make up for that difference. Or you could always run a Val using PAB9, SP6, or BP, but that will also not one-tap the boys, but it will still put them down super fast because the fire rate and pen and damage are all quite high on these guns. But again, it can be difficult to get your hands on the ammo for the VSS and also the Val, so it may not be an option for you. Now, a new option for this wipe that would also be viable is if you can get your hands on the SIG Spear, then using the FMJ bullets will deal 80 damage, but it does only have 36 pen, so that definitely makes it less ideal versus level 5 armor, whereas the hybrid ammo will still be able to one-tap Big Pipe and Birdeye, but just know that Knight will not be one-tappable. Now, the last thing that I will mention about guns is that I do tend to stay away from the 5.45 and the 5.56 calibers when hunting any bosses, since it is just not as forgiving as the bigger calibers, and my overall experiences boss hunting and goon hunting in general is much better using those bigger calibers. But at the end of the day, you can use and be successful with really any gun as long as you are familiar with the limitations of the bullets and your gun, or even if you are just shooting them in the head, and it definitely also helps if you do have a little bit of luck on your side and if you can even isolate them one by one. Now, the goons can definitely be one of the most difficult boss fights in Tarkov because they do tend to rush or flank you together to attempt to put you into a bad position and also to pinch you, and this is because they do function like unit mentality rather than working solo. But despite their combat tactics and the fact that they do have literal aimbot, one of the most difficult parts about the goons is actually getting them to spawn in the same raid as you, so I will go over now how I go about giving myself the best chance to run into them when I am trying to hunt them down. So like all the bosses in Tarkov, the goons do have a spawn chance that will fluctuate throughout the wipe, and at the beginning it will usually be between 8 and 10%, give or take, and at the time that I am making this video, it is actually in between 35 to 37% across all 4 different maps that they can spawn on. Another possibility is that we can also have events where you will see 100% spawn rate for all the bosses on specific maps or multiple maps, but if there is a 100% boss spawn rate event on their own respective maps, then the typical default map for the goons will be Lighthouse. But although these 100% spawn rate events are super fun, they're definitely not commonplace, so because of that, the most efficient way to locate the goons is to reference a Goon Tracker website, and currently there are 3 different websites that I cross-reference, being Tarkov Pal, Tarkov Goon Tracker, and also tarkovbot.eu, and I will pin a comment with links to these respective websites in the comment section of this video, as well as post them in the description for you guys to check out. And if you guys do have other reliable sources or methods that you use or reference, then by all means share them down in the comment section to potentially help somebody else out. And the reason why I do say to cross-reference the information is because sometimes there are either no recent reports or there can be false reports from some people. And obviously your mind will immediately go to the fact that some people are just being bozos and false reporting for no reason. But because the goons do actually tend to spend 2 to 3 hours on a map before they end up rotating, then there is a small time period where they can be spawning on 2 separate maps, which is at the end of their cycle on, for example, customs, and then the beginning of their cycle on woods. So because of this, I just like to see what each website is saying so that I know which map to load up to have the best chance of finding them. Especially with the overlap period where they are changing maps, then it can get a little bit confusing and you are kind of rolling the dice. But again, this is why I reference the websites. And just so that you guys know, at the time of me making this video, the red packet loss symbol that did used to show up in the top right hand corner has been patched out for customs as well as Shoreline. And even though it didn't work at all on Lighthouse due to the rogues always spawning in at the water treatment plant, and now with the addition of the BTR on woods, then it wouldn't have worked there either. but it was still a way for you to be more efficient on customs and also shoreline by looking for the symbol on shoreline at 4448 and on customs at 3938. So now because that is gone, then you will just have to sprint to their respective spawn locations on all the maps to see if you do get aggro or voice comm from a grenade. And also while you are moving through the map, just keep an ear out for Big Pipe's MCX or night full autoing people at their respective spawn locations. Another tip is that a bunch of grenades going off around that area is usually a good sign that people are trying to fight the goons. Now, like I just mentioned, the goons do spawn in at the beginning of the raid, so this can impact you for a different reason on Shoreline and also Woods, because I have spawned into a raid on Woods and was actively being shot at before my screen even fully loaded. And then on Shoreline, I loaded in, took 5 steps forward, got to the top of a hill, and then there was a fire hose of bullets that began flying at me. So just remember that if this does happen, then you have essentially pulled their aggro, and because they are incredibly aggressive, then that means that one or multiple will end up rushing you or even following you. And for example, I have actually had Knight chase me all the way from my spawn up to the east wing of the health resort, where I did have to fight him up there, or I've even had all 3 of them push down to the blue fence area by the crane at the water on Shoreline, and then I had to fight all 3 of them down there as well. So just remember, if you do happen to pull their aggro, then they will basically become absolutely relentless, just like that stage 5 clinger that you did date in high school, and pulling their aggro will most of the time be from either them seeing you or from you using a throwable like a grenade, flash, or smoke and throwing it anywhere in their vicinity. And if you are trying to locate them or prompt a voice line, then you can get one usually from them seeing you or from Kobe a grenade, or even if you are close enough, then you can also spam your voice lines at them and then they can potentially answer back, which can be helpful if you are all out of grenades. But now that you do know a little bit about how the goons work, basically you want to try to get yourself into hard cover before you do initially aggro the boys, and then you want to play off of that angle. This method works even better if you can get to a choke point where you can funnel them into. But if you cannot get yourself into ideal cover and they do happen to catch you off guard, then you will have to play off of rocks, a hill, or basically anything that will break their lines of sight on you. But just remember that if you do happen to pull their aggro, then 90% of the time they will end up pushing you, so then you can abuse the audio and also other game mechanics like lean peaks to expose the least amount of yourself as possible as they do rush at you. So then you can hopefully catch them in a running animation and full auto them while they try to ADS at you when they can finally see you around the hard cover. And now I will go over each one of the maps that they can spawn on so that you guys can have an idea as to how to approach your engagements. Now on Shoreline, I do find that the goons are the most difficult to fight here, even though they do only have one potential spawn location being at or around the weather station. I find it just heavily depends on your own spawn, but also which side of the elevated weather station area that the goons have spawned on as well. So I will show you guys how to approach from 3 different sides of the weather station because they are slightly all different. And you can end up fighting them outside around the hill. However, if possible, my recommendation and what most people actually say works best for them is if you can get inside of the weather station itself, and more specifically in the bathroom area there where you can shut the door. This way you can easily funnel them in and then kill them while they do phase through the door or while they are opening up the door. However, in my experience, they do rarely let me up the hill anywhere near the weather station building, so I've only gotten to fight them from inside of the weather station building once this wipes since the terrain has been altered. So I've ended up being stuck having sketchy fights outside and around the weather station area. Now, regardless of which side that you do approach from, a quick tip for you guys is to pop a Propital or some other painkiller so that if you do begin to be shot at while you are approaching, then you won't end up being dead in the water with a broken or blacked out leg, even though the chances are pretty likely that you will end up dying if they do catch you crossing regardless. But if you're not pre-medded and you catch a fracture, then you're definitely going to be dead. Another tip is that all the goons will voice comm if you do throw a grenade in their vicinity or if you do voice line near them. However, like all the other bosses, they do have a cooldown timer for the responses, so you can't just spam grenades over and over again. Usually you will have to wait the 10 to 20 seconds before getting another voice comm back from chucking a nade. Now, the easiest side in my opinion to approach from will be coming from Power Station, and on this side you will have more cover while approaching, which will obstruct all the goons, but especially Birdeye from lasering you at 200 meters out. But essentially from every side, your goal is to get up to the perimeter of the hill and then use the large boulders and landscape to your advantage while you end up waiting for them to rush you. And there are some boulders on this side that you can use to rotate around the hill to test if you can either draw their aggro or make your way towards into the weather station building. Or at least that's my mindset when I am trying to hunt them on this map. And basically once you draw their aggro, then you want to hold an angle until Knight and Big Pipe mindlessly push at you, and sometimes Birdeye will end up following suit directly behind them. But if he does stay back and not push up with the other two, then the trick for him is to use grenades to help pinpoint exactly where he is. And the grenades can also get him to move, which is when you should try to get a visual or an angle on him. And if appropriate, then push up and try to kill him, especially while he does have his back to you trying to reposition from the grenade. Now, approaching from the pier side, you do want to try and sprint up against the hillside so that you can use the cover here and wait for them to push you. This side is going to be okay to push from as long as they're not looking over the edge waiting for you. I have had a couple of times where I was running on the main road towards extract, and then they basically start to laser me as I am just running down the road minding my own business. If they do start making any shots at you, then I have had them push all the way down towards the pier to try and get me. So as mentioned earlier, it is heavily dependent on which side of the hill that they're standing on as to which side is going to be the best to push. And if you are coming up from the pier, then the terrain on this side of the weather station area is going to be a little bit more uneven and annoying with more trees for the goons to run through and behind. So it can make it more challenging. Plus from this side, there is also no chance that you're going to make it into the weather station building uncontested. So you are definitely going to be fighting them outside from here. And lastly, from the road to customs and railway bridge side, in my experience, this way is absolutely toxic because I have been shot at from 300 meters out, and they really don't let you approach easily from this side any of the times that I have attempted, or at least that has been my experience. I know I've definitely seen some people have very good luck from this side, but you do have to be aware of Birdeye being up on the tower, and there is also less good cover from here. However, one positive when approaching from this side of the weather station hill is that you are going to be the closest to the building that you can be. So you do have a good chance of making it into that building from this side if you are able to actually even approach it or even get up to the top. Now, moving on to woods, the goons have one main area that they can spawn in between the Scav bunker and Connex Overlook area. So because of this location, there really is only two routes that you can approach from if they happen to have spawned here. The first one is going to be the sunken abandoned village side, and then the second one will be from the Usec camp. There is a third option, but you absolutely do not want to try and approach them from the convoy because the lack of cover here will absolutely get you sat down. So either way, just try to use one of the first two options that we will go over now. Now on woods, getting inside the Scav bunker will make your life easier, but just like on Shoreline, this is going to be heavily dependent on their spawn as well as your own spawn, and if you are able to approach the bunker area at all from the Usec side. I have actually never been able to approach the bunker coming from the Connex Overlook side. They have always rushed and fought me over there. But if you are coming from the Usec campsite and have made it up to the Scav bunker and tower area, and then you hear the goons pushing you, then just remember that your best option will likely be to run into the Scav bunker and then hold an angle as they funnel down the stairs. Hopefully this is what happens for you guys, since it does make dealing with them very easy and also provides you with cover to loot them all and then Tetris it. But one thing I wanted to mention about this Scav bunker is that I have had the goons basically bug out and get stuck on the stairs before, or they just essentially refuse to push down into the bunker after me, so then they stand up over top and then just stare at the stairs. When this did happen, I had to throw grenades outside the bunker and also try to bait them down by quick peeking out of the bunker to redraw their aggro as they stood over the bunker tracking me through the ground staring at the stairs. But usually once you are able to kill one of them, then it will break whatever glitch is going on, and then the other two will push you again, so just be prepared for that. The one raid that this did happen, I was basically held down in the bunker by Big Pipe. It legit felt like I was playing against a PMC, since nowadays all they do is just wait you out and camp exits anyway. But as for actually fighting them from the Usec side, if they do happen to see you while you are at one of the Usec camps or while you are up on the rocks on the left side, then you do want to actually stay up behind these rocks. And then you basically want to use your left-hand peaks to not expose too much of your body, and then you can blast them as they do come up to you. After one or two of them have rushed you, then you can use your grenades to locate the remaining goons who have not pushed up immediately. And then from the Connex Overlook side, then it can definitely be problematic if they have spawned right there towards the edge, especially if they do happen to look over the side. But if you are able to make it up against the hill before they end up pushing you, then you can use the rock ledge to keep your right hand peak there, and then you can mow them down as they do push you. Or if they did happen to spawn over at the Scav bunker, then you can always use one of the Connexes to hold angles around those as they do push you as well. And usually when I do go up into the Connex Overlook area, then it will launch a grenade over towards the Scav bunker and see if I do get a voice line that will prompt me to know that the goons are there and that they are pushing. Now on to Lighthouse, I do tend to run into the goons the least often on this map. However, if there is an event where all the bosses do have a 100% spawn rate, then Lighthouse is going to be the default map for them. So they will have a 100% spawn rate here at one of their spawn locations, unless it is specified for them to be elsewhere. And on Lighthouse, the goons will have two potential spawn areas, with the first one being at the Blue Chalet and then the other one being at the water treatment plant. But if they have spawned in, then in my experience, they are more often than not at the Blue Chalet. So to fight them here, again, it is going to be dependent on which section of this area that they are patrolling at, as well as which side that you are approaching from. But basically, your overall goal is to get inside of the Blue Chalet and into the sauna room on the first floor, and then hold an angle from inside of here, since it will force them to funnel into you. And because it is a dead end room, then you won't have any windows or doors behind you that Birdeye can sneak up to. But if you are coming from the brown chalet side, then you may end up getting aggroed as soon as you crest over top of the hill before you can get down into the blue chalet. So if this is the case, then you will just have to use the house with the garage or any of the boulders as hard cover as you try to fend off the goons and fight for your life basically as you push up into a better position as necessary or possible. Using this building with the garage is actually not going to be too bad of an option. It just depends on whether or not you can safely get into it in the first place, and also all the different windows that you can be seen through by Birdeye and the other goons depending upon where they are standing. So you just have to be conscientious when you are standing somewhere whether or not you can be seen from an angle that you didn't know about. And then if you are approaching from the road by construction on the other side or from the village, then there is a little detached house with a kitchen in it that you can use as hard cover. And you can also even go inside of it to get a position to fight them off as well. Now I have only had to use this building one time as I was caught off guard once by Birdeye as I was coming out of the trail from the village. So as I did kill him, then I knew that the other two would be pushing. And because of the amount of bushes and shrubbery on the way from this building to the blue chalet, I figured that I wouldn't have time to adequately get into the building and position before they ended up pushing me and trying to kill me. So instead, I just used this building just to get into a more protected position and wait for the other two to rush at me full speed. And as for the water treatment plant, usually Knight is who will typically alert you that they have spawned in there because he will full send rush at you once you do start killing the rogues. And once I do find out that the goons are at the water treatment plant, then depending on how I am clearing the plant that raid, my approach will definitely change to going to building 3. So if I was going on the left building 1 side, then I will turn around and double back to try to get into building 3, since my goal will be to try to get in there and fight them from either the back rooms area immediately once you do jump in through the window from outside, or if they don't rush at me from there, then I will try to bait them in while holding an angle on the door at the back entrance. Obviously with the rogues it can make things more complicated, so another goal of yours should be to try to let the goons and rogues be the aggressors, and if possible, isolate as many kills as possible, especially the goons. And by letting them be the aggressor, you can situate yourself in a way that makes sure that your back is not exposed to a rogue line of sight from either another building or outside, and it will take one of the possible problems out of the equation. The biggest issue with using building number 3 will be to locate Birdeye. Sometimes he will push in, sometimes he will just go and sit behind some hard cover, so that's where you will have to use your grenades to try and locate him. So now on to customs. This is by far the preferred map when it does come to goon hunting, and people will basically tell you to not even bother trying on any other map and just to wait until they cycle back to customs again. However, the premise of this video was that if you did watch it, then you would be ready to adapt and have a better chance of actually killing the goons if you do happen to run into them while on one of the other 3 maps, especially while you're not even trying to hunt them. And if you do end up watching the whole video, then at least it will give you guys the knowledge to not just get mowed down because you had no idea what to do when they do rush you. And this way you won't end up freezing or putting yourself in a bad position. You'll at least know that there are ways to deal with them besides waiting for customs. So on this map, the goons can actually spawn inside of quite of a large area, either inside or around the stronghold area. And just that you guys know, Reshala and his guards can also have a potential spawn here as well, so you can also run into them while goon hunting. And as with all the other maps, part of the difficulty will depend upon your spawn as well as which side of stronghold that they've spawned in. But for the most part, the preferred method is going to be getting inside of a building and then funneling them in, just like every other map. However, unlike the other maps, you actually have some options here, being inside of Mechanic, inside of Crackhouse, or inside of the medical or fire rooms in the stronghold building itself. So if you want to go into Crackhouse, then you can hold an angle on either the first or the second floor. But some things to be aware of is that when you are holding an angle out of a door frame or just anywhere on the first floor, then just be aware that Birdeye can silently sneak up to any of the windows outside of the building and then look inside and ice you before you even know that he's there. So you definitely need to be aware of your surroundings as well as different areas that you can get shot in the back or snuck up on by silent footsteps. And usually because of this reason, then I will typically go up to the second floor to hold the metal stair doorway from up there. But just be aware that inside of the big room there with the large window that is facing towards Fortress, that you can also be shot through that window by the goons or even by a scav on the stationary gun. So for that reason, I also tend not to stay inside of that big room either. Instead, I will hold the metal stairs doorway from either the big office room or in the other med room that is just past the couch. I usually will tend to pick the room that's just past the couch, so that way I am protected from the windows, and also because Birdeye can also sneak up the staircase that is inside of the building and then shoot you if you are holding the position from the office before you even know that he's there. But like I said, for that reason, I will usually pick the med room. From the med room, if he does happen to sneak up from the staircase, then usually there will be not enough of my body peeking out that he can get multiple shots on me. So as long as the game will allow me to tank one shot from Birdeye, then usually I can sneak back into the room and then shut the door or just heal before he ends up pushing me. You can also jump out of that window outside the back of the building and then run back into the first floor as well. When I am holding this med room, then I also haven't really had Birdeye sneak up in behind me because I am closer to the metal door. So usually the AI will prioritize the door that is closest to me, which will be the metal door that is going to be right in front of you. So from this position, then you will have quite a good advantage and then be able to mag dump them as soon as they open up that door on the metal stairs. So I have seen a lot of people that do prefer to work at a Crackhouse. However, in my opinion, there is a better option on this side of the stronghold building, which is going to be inside of the mechanic shop. So if you can get the boys to actually aggro you while you are inside of mechanic, then you can leave the back door closed, which will act as an audio cue or at least an alarm in case you do need to focus on the opposite side where the door is open all the time towards the Ruaf roadblock. But basically inside of here, then you will be able to use audio cues and then tell which door that they are coming to. And with that back door closed, then at least then you will also get audio cues by either the door being opened or if they are running up, which then you can focus on the closed door. And as soon as they open it up, then you can blast them. This way you will be able to funnel them either way, and you can also go out and then swing them with a right hand peek if they are going to stand up against this mechanic building as well. Now another variable that you do have to consider more so on customs than all the other maps is other PMCs third party during or after the fights. And mechanic or Crackhouse especially are going to be strong locations to hold down from approaching PMCs. And if you do also kill the goons inside of one of these buildings, then it is going to be enclosed where you can loot your kills with at least some cover. Stronghold can also be good too, but there are quite a few lines of sight in there as well as multiple levels that can be problematic, especially for the audio, because as we all know, that's not optimized. And in Stronghold, you do also have the issue where you can be more exposed than what you think. So if you didn't end up killing the goons inside one of the actual isolated rooms inside Stronghold, then you are definitely going to be in someone's potential line of sight. Now, the next area where you can potentially fight the goons from is if you do push over from the blue fence or from Big Skelly, then you do have some connexes that are in between those areas and also Fortress. So if you do get caught on the way to Fortress, at least you may not be dead in the water and you can have some form of hard cover to work with, or you can also try to use a scope to tap them from a distance from the top of Big Skelly. However, at the top of Big Skelly, you are going to be quite exposed from multiple angles. And I find that the goons are also hypersensitive if they are looked at from on top of Big Skelly, and usually Birdeye or one of the other two will end up absolutely lasering you from that area. Now, if you do push over from the blue fence or from Big Skelly, then you do have some connexes that are in between yourself and Fortress. So that way, if you do end up getting caught on the way to Fortress, at least you may not be dead in the water. You can have some form of hard cover to work with. Or if you did end up bringing in a scope, then you can try to use that in order to tap them from a distance from the top of Big Skelly. However, you will be quite exposed up on the top of Big Skelly, either from PMCs that are sitting inside a Fortress or even from the goons themselves, because I do find that the goons are hypersensitive if they are looked at from the top of Big Skelly, that they will just kind of twist on you and then just absolutely laser you when you are trying to scope in on them. You are also very exposed from the backside over by the actual train by New Gas and just basically anywhere over by the bus station, or even from PMCs that are coming from Little Skelly. Now, my preferred place in general to fight them and where I do have the most success, at least on this map, is inside of the medical room in Fortress. So if you can actually get yourself into that building, then it will funnel them really nicely since there is only one way in or out. And you can also do the same inside of the fire room in Fortress as well, if that's the only room that you can get into. But as mentioned earlier, Fortress is a massive PMC and player scav hotspot, so you will have to be efficient with your killing and looting so that you can leave there before being swarmed. Especially if you are making a bunch of noise or grenades are going off, then essentially it will be like a dinner bell to anybody else on the map. You will have all the different dorms chads sprinting over trying to see what's going on. Especially since Reshala is also a possible spawn there, they're going to think that it's either going to be the goons or Reshala, and that they're going to be getting some free loot after you've already done all the work. And on the opposite side of Fortress towards the old gas station, then there is going to be a lot of open areas, so you definitely don't want to be caught off guard out there. But if you do happen to be caught out in the open, then you want to try to get to any form of hard cover that you can, such as the connexes that are by the train platform, and then you essentially want to try and hold that down and hope that they push. However, one miserable part about fighting them from here is that to try and loot your kills, they will essentially be completely out in the open, so sometimes it can be absolutely impossible to actually get your loot out of the raid. If I have ended up killing them in this position, then what I have done is actually gone and thrown my entire kit somewhere else and then just gone and thrown on their own kit. That way there, then likely I will get my own insurance and I'm not technically going to lose anything. But essentially the goons are relatively easy once you do know how they work, and hopefully this video has helped you guys to understand a little bit more about them. Basically, you do need to try your best not to aggro them until you do get yourself inside somewhere or at least behind an area of hard cover. That way you can play an angle that has an easy choke point, either a door or a narrow hallway or at least a right angle peak, and then that way they will brainlessly rush into you. The best method will be to isolate each one by one. Just remember that Knight has the 80 head HP, and then Big Pipe and Birdeye do have the 70 head HP, so they will be easier to deal with. You do want to try and get rid of them all as fast as possible, so you do want to aim for the head. M80 is arguably going to be the best ammo, or you can also use 54 RPS ammo, which will also work just as good. The only thing is that you will be going into a semi-auto gun rather than a full auto gun, unless you are running the AVT, and then that one is a full auto gun that fires 54R. So hopefully this guide helps you all to deal with the goons and will make either farming them or getting your tasks done easier. And if you do want to join our growing Tarkov community, I will have links to my Discord in the description and also pinned in the comments section here, as well as a link to my Twitch where I do stream multiple nights a week and I will typically help viewers with tasks or also answer any questions that you guys may have. Again, thank you all so much for stopping by and watching my guide on this. I do appreciate you for sticking it out to the end. We will see you guys in the next one, and hopefully you have a fantastic rest of your day.